see the representative speak. I'm Brian McCain. I'm Congressman Tipton's district director, actually based out of here in Pueblo. And one thing that we like to do is get in front of high school students, like all students, and talk about what he does, what it's like to be a congressman, some of the issues he's working on, and then take some questions for you. And with that, Congressman Tipton.
Good. Well, hey, great to be able to be with you guys this morning. My name's Scott Tipton. I have the privilege to be able to represent the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado. And for those of you that aren't familiar really with our district, we have 29 of Colorado's 64 counties. We have 54,000 square miles of Colorado. We take in all of Pueblo County. We go down to Walsenburg, take in all of the county, cross over La Vida Pass, take in the San Luis Valley, cross over Wolf Creek Pass, we take in Pagosa Springs, over to Durango, over to Cortez, up to Montrose, through Olathe, then up to Delta, up to Grand Junction, up to Craig, then we go over to Steamboat Springs, we take in Aspen as well, take in Crested Butte and Gunnison County, and so a big swath of the state of Colorado. And I'd like to be able to point out to our colleagues out of Texas, if we flattened our district out, we'd be bigger in the state of Texas. So we've got a big area to be able to cover. I've had the privilege to be able to represent this district since 2010. By way of background, I've not been a career politician. Started my own business right out of college, operated that for 30 years, and then ran for Congress. Currently serve on the Financial Services Committee in Washington. That is now chaired by Maxine Waters. Have on our committee some names that you may have heard if you're following the news. We have Talib on the committee, we have Presley on the committee, Ocasio-Cortez on the committee. So a very interesting committee to be able to listen to and to be able to hear some of the ideas that are coming out. When we're talking about government here in the state of Colorado, we have 7 representatives for the entire state. If we take California as a different example, they have 53 representatives from the state of California. Each of our states has 2 senators. Ours are Gardner and Bennett. California, as well, has just 2 senators. So that's balanced. That's actually to where the 2 branches have to be able to work together. And the idea behind that is to make sure that small states like ours, that have a little over 5 million people that live in the state of Colorado, we have an equal voice in the United States Senate. But when we're talking about sheer population, that is represented in the House of Representatives. And so that's part of the balance of power that we have with the executive branch and then, of course, the judicial branch as well to be able to deal with. A lot of the issues that we're working on, I'm focused on our district. I'd like to be able to point out as I travel through Colorado that oftentimes we've had a tale of 2 economies in our state. To where Denver, a lot of our resort areas have done exceedingly well. But when we move out into our rural areas, when we get into Pueblo, into Walsenburg, through the San Luis Valley, up and down the west slope of Colorado, we haven't had some of that same economic opportunity that we've seen in some of the metropolitan areas. So we've been focused a lot on jobs. And one of the big impacts that we've seen has been in terms of regulations on jobs. And I always like to be abundantly clear, I'm not anti-regulation. I believe that we need to be able to have some good regulations in place, to be able to have guardrails for us to be able to work through, to make sure that we're doing things properly, that we're working safely, creating good opportunities for jobs. But we do have an example, multiple examples literally in our district, where over-regulation has impacted small businesses' ability to be able to create jobs, to be able to increase wages. And let's make sure that we aren't making government policy that's becoming a stumbling block rather than the stepping stone to prosperity. Through the Financial Services Committee, I've introduced a variety of pieces of legislation to be able to make sure that we've got good, sound regulations that are making good opportunities for banks to be able to make loans to our small businesses, for families to be able to get those loans as well, for maybe improvements on property, to be able for their kids to be able to go to school. And we've had some reasonably good success. Served also on the Natural Resources Committee. I've introduced and passed legislation through the House of Representatives for all of the above. When we're talking about natural resources and development in this country, I've always felt that one of the great secret weapons that the United States has had has been an abundance and affordable energy, and make sure that we're able to deliver that. I will always argue that nobody in the world will do it better than we will in the United States if you want to be able to protect the environment and still produce affordable energy. In our district, we have the second largest natural reserve of LNG, liquid natural gas, that we can actually export. We have good opportunities. I've supported the development of what is called Jordan Cove to be able to export some LNG over to the Orient, to be able to create jobs here in our district, and also to be able to make sure that we're getting affordable energy right here as well. One thing I'm really pleased with, Senator Gardner and I had introduced legislation for a study for the BLM to be able to move to the west. They've now made the determination that the new headquarters for the BLM are going to be in Grand Junction, Colorado, in our district. I think this is important. I had an opportunity to visit with Secretary Bernhardt just a few weeks ago. He did, in the course of that conversation, said that he had a gentleman that was working in the BLM offices in Washington, D.C., and commented that he'd never seen a piece of sagebrush. Well, it'd probably be a pretty good idea if you're going to work in BLM to actually see sagebrush, because the abundance of land that the BLM controls, 99% of it, is actually in the West. So being able to move those headquarters to the West, to be able to have policymakers who are going to be making the decisions on the lands that they actually manage, I think is actually a very good idea, something that we're going to be able to continue to support. I've introduced and passed through that all of the above legislation that calls for wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric, oil, and gas. Had a bill that was the Small Hydroelectric and Jobs Act. And first, that passed and President Obama signed that into law. One of the first examples of that was actually in our district of Montrose at Chavano Falls, to be able to produce clean hydroelectric energy. So those are a lot of the focus areas that we're trying to be able to work on out of our office. We just advocated to be able to get the museum for a Medal of Honor winners here in Pueblo, the home of heroes. To be able to do that, unfortunately, the decision was made to be able to move that down into Texas. But to be able to advocate for our veterans, for me, is something that's critically important. We have one of the highest veteran populations in the entire country in the 3rd Congressional District of Colorado. People who have been willing to stand up and put their lives on the line to be able to protect this country. And I think we can all share the belief and value that we need to make sure that we're fulfilling the promises to those who have been willing to stand up and to be able to fight for this country. And I'll give a lot of credit to Brian McCain. He's a veteran, works out of our office here in terms of a lot of the casework that we've been able to do to be able to work for our veterans and make sure that they're getting the benefits that they deserve in terms of that commitment that they made literally to our country. It's an interesting time in Washington right now, as you can well imagine. I usually like to be able to come back and tell you the good news is Congress isn't in session, and so America's probably safer when we're back in the district. It is a challenging time right now. A lot of focus, as many of you are well aware, is on the impeachment that is going on. Had the opportunity to be able to read through the documents that came out in terms of the whistleblower and also the transcript. And while you can certainly question maybe some of the words, is it an impeachable offense? I don't think it rises to that level. But I do think it's going to be pursued. We do need to be making sure that it's an even playing field. That means that you've got the opportunity for Republicans and Democrats to have an equal say, which has happened in the past, and to make sure that there's an opportunity for people to be able to come in and testify from both parties. To be able to address that issue. So this is something that I think we'll see continuing on, obviously, over the course of the next months. And my concern really is that we've taken our eye off the ball to a great degree of issues that are going to be important to our country. To be able to lower healthcare costs in this country, to be able to secure our border, to make sure that we're creating jobs here, to get trade agreements through, to be able to create prosperity in this country in terms of a lot of the focus where we need to actually be working on an important issue, and don't dismiss it lightly, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done on behalf of the American people and on behalf of the families that we represent in this district. So I think this is my second time here at Pueblo West, and it's a privilege to be able to be here with you this morning, and I'd like to be able to answer any questions that you might have, and thanks for letting me join you. Does anybody have a question? Yes, sir. Do I consider what? I'm sorry? Okay, and what are your 4 factors? Okay, okay. Yeah, well, to the basis of your question, when we have a vote that's going to be coming up, my first concern is every candidate, any person has the privilege to be able to run for office and then to be able to be elected. You always run on some base principles. And my principles really are freedom of opportunity. I believe that the best solutions are right here at home, that we're going to have. And that we do not need to have an overreaching, over-promising federal government coming in, mandating to us. So I'm big on a states' rights position, to be able to have those determinations made locally. I look at it in terms of how it's going to be able to affect our district and the people that live here, and to be able to create opportunities right here at home. Those are a lot of the measures that I take, when we're looking at each vote that comes through.
From for Colorado's green energy?
I'm sorry, sir, I couldn't hear. I heard part of it. It was, where's your funding coming from for?
Where is your funding coming from for our Colorado's green energy?
Okay, this has got to be private sector. When we look at the bill that I passed that President Obama signed into law, Small Hydroelectric and Jobs Act, this is going to be some local funds that are going to be coming in. It's going to be private businesses that are going to be injecting capital to be able to develop that. And I think that's really where the best solutions are going to be coming out of, from the private sector. And that gets actually into the balance in between regulatory policy and the opportunities that we have to be able to get, right now, as many of you are well aware, we've got trillions of dollars of debt in this nation. You guys are ultimately going to have to pay the bill. We need to make sure that we're spending the resources that we have responsibly, and the more private capital and the freer markets that we have to be able to make those investments. If we look at the cell phones that we all carry around, it was a lot of private resources and investment that came into that. It's free markets, it's capitalism that'll provide those best opportunities. There's a role for government to play at different levels, maybe to be able to provide some seed capital, but it needs to be limited. And the best way to be able to pay for it is going to be private dollars coming in and letting the free markets be able to work.
Here's a question.
Now,
What was the business you opened right out of college?
Yeah, it was interesting. I went to Fort Lewis College in Durango, have a degree in political science, and that instantly led me into the Native American pottery business. So, which makes no sense, I know. So, it was a business opportunity when we're looking at just the ability to be able to create something. There was a market that was going to be available. Had the opportunity to be able to work with people that I'd gone from grade school all the way through high school with, and a couple in college as well. We started the business. We reached a high of, I think it was 40 plus people that were working for us in the business. Manufactured goods from dust to finished product. We wholesaled the product in all 50 states and actually did a little bit of export as well, and did that for 30 years before I ran for office. So.
And just turn on the switch, okay? Yeah, wait a second.
What sparked your interest in politics and prompted you to run for representative?
You know, that's, I think everybody that runs for office, I guess, has their own answer. And it actually goes to maybe the earlier question a little bit in my answer. I have 2 daughters, and now over the course of time we've been married. We now have 3 grandkids that are sitting there. But when I was looking out windshield in terms of the country, when I was looking at national debt that was continuing to pile up, looking at opportunities, the ability to be able to just step out and be able to start a business. When I started my business, you filed with the Secretary of State, went down and got a sales tax license, you know, at the local level, and we were in business. I got a $10,000 character loan at our local bank. I defy you to be able to do that today. Just to be able to start a business. So a lot of my goal and my motivation was in terms of really what my girls, what you guys are going to be inheriting in terms of the country. And, you know, grew up at a time to where I believed anything was possible. That you could start, I'm the first person in my family to be able to go to college and graduate. And it wasn't that my parents didn't want to go, it just never was going to be strictly in the cards for them. But they raised me that in the United States of America, anything is achievable. And I wanted to do what I could do to help assure that that same promise, that same hope was going to be there for my girls and ultimately now for my grandkids and for you as well. And that was a lot of my motivation.
Do you think that we should pull troops out of the war and completely end the war on terror, or do you think it should continue?
No, I think that my estimate that I'm looking right now in Syria, we just announced this morning, the Turks are making military moves. The Kurds, the YPG, have been good allies in the war on terror. And I understand and I agree. We had 2 young men this year out of Cortez, Colorado, that were killed in the war on terror. And I understand, I have a son-in-law that was deployed over in the area flying a B-1 bomber. The risks that are there. And we'd all like to come home. And we'd all like there to be peace. But unfortunately, we have enemies that do not have the same goals. And I believe that it's better if we can take the fight to them rather than having the fight here. And so I would encourage really the administration and those that will be making those determinations, make sure that we're looking out for the broad long-term interests of this country. I think that the Kurds and YPG have been good allies in terms of fighting the war on terror, and believe we should support them.
Where's the money from like all the pot taxes going?
I'm sorry?
Where's all the money going for the pot taxes?
Yeah, and this is really kind of a state issue, and I think it's a question that I've received at a variety of different meetings. Again, it's the state. A lot of the dollars were to be going to actually education, as I understood, and I think that it's going to be appropriate at the state level that they're tracking those dollars, making sure that when we're talking, my wife is a former teacher. Both of her parents taught as well. The importance of an education, we cannot overstate. And, real frankly, I think in terms of getting those dollars back, be able to maybe pay our teachers more, be able to make sure that you guys have the technology in front of you to be able to learn, because it's an ever-changing world. That is a resource that the state needs to make sure that we're monitoring and getting those dollars back. That is a state as opposed to a federal issue. Okay. We have one here.
What is your prediction for the impeachment, and have you found any evidence to solidify that prediction?
Yeah, I think right now there's a big distinction. You can impeach. Bill Clinton was impeached, but never removed from office. Never went through the Senate. So I think the probability of the removal of the president is highly unlikely. I think right now it's in Nancy Pelosi's hands. She launched what was called a formal impeachment inquiry, and real frankly, I'm not sure what that is, because you already had committees that were looking at a variety of different issues. I'm not sure what the announcement did to actually change that. We do have 2 committees that are currently being cut out of the process in terms of Foreign Affairs Committee, and then also the Judiciary Committee as well. It's strictly under Adam Schiff on the Oversight Committee. I think it's worth it, and I voted actually to make sure that we have complete transparency. And from what I've seen right now, and as I've noted earlier, you can question some of the comments. We elected an unconventional president, and in terms of communication and whatnot. But is that impeachable? I don't see it as an impeachable offense. I think the founding fathers, when they called for high crimes and misdemeanors, they're talking for an actual crime that gone on. So I think there is a possibility that the Speaker could bring it before the House. Maybe a fair possibility. I think there are only 8 Democrats, and they have the majority right now if they wanted to be able to put it on the floor. But I think ultimately you would not see it clear the Senate. They would have their trial. And I think from my understanding right now and some limited conversations with the Senate, that it would not clear that hurdle in the Senate for removal.
You'll have to switch on the mic.
What's your advice for young people who want to go into politics when they get older?
I think that probably maybe the best advice is just know your core values, what you believe, and then to be able to stand up for those principles. And we've got the freedom in this country, and it's what really makes us the best country on the face of the earth. We can have people with absolutely opposite opinions on how to be able to address something, and that's what makes us great. To be able to have that freedom to be able to think and believe as we choose to. And one thing I think I would really encourage, if people are looking at politics, start setting the template for lowering the temperature. We don't need to be dismissive of each other. We don't need to belittle each other. We're allowed to have different opinions, and we can respectfully disagree. We just happen to disagree. And so if you're looking at that, I think that maybe trying to move off of that model is not a bad way to be able to proceed, and to be able to look at the goals that you'd like to be able to achieve. It's a great privilege to be able to be elected. And when we look at the people that are working in the different bureaucracies, different agencies, our state and our counties, our cities, and at the federal government, we've got some really dedicated people trying to be able to do the right thing. And I always like to be able to kind of point out, I don't think anything is done with malice. Nobody says, let's pass something this is really going to hurt folks. I think the intent is always to do the right thing, to be able to do a good thing. We've got a lot of different challenges. Many times we just have different ways to be able to approach the problem. And so starting out with knowing and understanding who and what you are and what you believe in is probably maybe some of the best advice to be able to just drive the issue that you'd like to see and get in the public forum and see if enough people agree with you.
Just a quick question back here.
Okay.
I have my economics class with me today. I'm Mr. Bradfield. We have a personal finance literacy section that we teach, and part of that is college expenses and the access to college. And one of the things that I'd like you to be able to talk to my class and the rest of the students here is what's going on with the student loan crisis and access to college as far as financial aid.
And as I noted, thanks for what you guys are doing in looking at this. We have a lot of proposals right now to be able to eliminate student debt and to be able to make it free. I think probably you can deal with this on the economics end of it. There is no free in the world. It will be paid for one way or another. It's either going to be taxes, it's going to be increased, or is there a better way to be able to do it? You know, I've had the opportunity to be able to sit down with our two major universities, CU, CSU, in Colorado, and to be able to ask the question on why in the country we have two areas of our economy where we've seen double-digit increases year over year for an extended period of time. I think the first break now was just about this last year, and it was for healthcare and it was for education. And I think it's a very reasonable question to be able to ask of our universities, of our colleges, why are those costs for students continuing to go up? Why are they going up? And I don't think that we've had a satisfactory answer in terms of why those tuition rates continue to rise. I think there's a possibility, we're looking at some potential legislation to be able to renegotiate the interest rate on that. And give you a personal example, and I think it's some of the frustration. You guys aren't in college yet, but I have a son-in-law. And went to Fort Lewis College, didn't have a huge student debt, but it was big to him. Worked and paid it off over the course of time. And his question to me was, if they're going to forgive all the student debt, do I get my money back? So is that fair? So I think it gets to an element really of fairness. I think we do need to be asking the question about our higher ed institutions in terms of the costs, ways to be able to reduce that. I think it's going to be really important when you're getting a degree, make sure that if you're taking out $100,000 in loans, you can actually get a job to where you can pay back the loan, to be able to get those resources back in terms of degrees that are going to be available, some good counseling maybe at the college level in terms to be able to address that as well. That the student debt is real, and I think that it's a real challenge for a lot of our students who've now graduated and moved into the workplace. And so I think we still need to be looking, when you sign a piece of paper, if you go to a bank and you take out a loan for a house, if you fall behind on it, you fall behind on it. It's still an obligation. And so probably that's one of the more important things to be able to understand from business classes, economics classes. When you do sign something, you are obligated. That's an adult obligation that we're taking on to be able to pay that back. We do need to be looking at ways to be able to maybe lower those tuition costs, maybe be able to adjust some of those interest payments, to be able to make it affordable. But the main thing to be able to remember, if somebody ever walks into the door and say, this is going to be free, there is no free anywhere for anything. We will ultimately have to pay, and the person that's going to have to pay is the person that you look at in the mirror every morning.
All right, we can take two more questions. So,
What is your stance on a UBI as an alternative to welfare programs?
Yeah, I think that the more, here's some good news. It just came out. Right now, we have the lowest unemployment in 50 years. We're at 3.5% in the country. That did not happen. Last time it happened is when Neil Armstrong was getting ready to land on the moon. When we were able to achieve that in this country. And I'd like to be able to give you a kind of an example. We need to move people from actually assistance programs to work. We'd had a proposal that we'd had, and we're trying to be able to move it in the last Congress. I think all of us share it. Not one of us wants to see somebody that's having a hard time go hungry or be cold and out in the cold. We need to be able to have that social safety net. We need to make sure that that social safety net does not become a snare that keeps people in assistance programs in perpetuity. So the proposal that we were putting forward was to be able to start paring back the assistance that you would receive as your circumstances improved. And I think that's a better way to be able to approach it, simply because we all want to be able to help those that are in need, there's no question. But we need to make sure that we're also incentivizing people to become taxpayers rather than recipients of tax dollars. That's how it should work, to be able to do it, because every dollar that we pay in to be able to give that assistance are dollars that we are able to give to our families. So the fewer people that are in need for that, I think is a positive move that we need to be trying to work on, and we'll continue to try and work on some of those solutions. But I think the idea of being able to actually tear back the support, not cut it off completely, but to be able to incentivize people to move into the workforce, be able to rise to a higher level is a better solution.
What do you consider as the greatest success of the American government during our time?
Greatest success of what, I'm sorry?
Of the American government.
I think the greatest success of the American government is, if we look at history, we just had the celebration of Normandy, the freedom of Europe. America played a huge role in terms of that. If you look at people that want to be able to come to this country, they could go to any other country in the world. They want to come to the United States. And so I think to a great degree of preservation of liberty, the freedom to be able to grow. I met a young man, it's been probably 10 years ago now, in Durango, Colorado. Came to the United States out of Norway. Nice country. And I asked him, why did you want to be able to come to the United States? He said, for opportunity. He said, I could have had a very pleasant life in Norway, but he said, I was never really going to be able to go up. He said, I wanted to be able to do better. He said, there was only one country in the world that was going to really afford me that opportunity, and it was the United States of America. So I think our greatest legacy really as a country is, it's often been described as we've been the beacon of freedom in the world. And I think it's our obligation to try and continue that and be able to spread freedom, the opportunity for liberty, for self-determination to others in the world as well.
So I think that will be the end of the question period. Yes.
Okay.
On behalf of the Provost High School students, we thank Representative Tipton and Mr. Brian McCain for taking their valued time and joining us for